Welcome back. This is our final installment of our Holy Week series dedicated to helping us devote ourselves to the Lord, the main character in the Passion narrative. The drama will come to a grand climax on Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday. At South Rock Christian Church, we will have services dedicated to both events, and we want to invite you to attend. Today is Maundy Thursday. The word Maundy is derived from the Latin word mandatum, which means commandment. The idea is to recall the new commandment established at the Last Supper with Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, exemplifying the way of the Christian life moving forward. But before we get to that, let's recall the situation that led to these events. It was time to celebrate the Passover, the most sacred of Jewish feasts. As many as 3 million people might gather in Jerusalem for the week. Word had spread quickly that Jesus of Nazareth was on his way to the feast and that he had raised a man named Lazarus from Bethany from the dead. That news spread like wildfire. It was no surprise then that thousands lined the road as Jesus entered Jerusalem. Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel. Blessed is the kingdom of our father David. Now, understanding what the crowds declared through their words and actions is crucial. Laying palm branches before Jesus echoed the same welcome given to Simon Maccabeus in 141 BC on the eve of his victory over the occupying Syrian forces. The exclamation, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," comes from Psalm 118, which was written when warring nations surrounded Israel, yet God delivered her. This phrase was sung to honor the conquering hero who brought in liberation. The word Hosanna means save now, much like the expression God save the king. The poetic language of that time helps us fully grasp the significance of their words and actions. For example, in a book called the Psalms of Solomon, we read, "Behold, O Lord, raise up their king and gird him with strength that he may shatter unrighteous rulers. He may purge Jerusalem of the nations that trample her down, and he shall destroy the godless nations with the words of his mouth. Hosanna." Now the expectation was that the king could come to shatter, to crush, to cleanse. Nonetheless, Jesus of Nazareth was indeed a king, but not the kind they had anticipated. He would disappoint both the Passover pilgrims and his own disciples, yet in doing so, he would also fulfill their most profound need. Now, this truth became unmistakably clear a few days later. Jesus and his disciples had gathered for a meal. The roads and streets of Palestine were unpaved, turning to thick dust in dry weather and deep mud when wet. The shoes of that time were simple, flat soles held to the feet by a few straps. Every walk through the streets left feet filthy. Most homes had basins of water and a towel near the entrance, and often a servant would greet visitors by washing their feet. On the night Jesus dined with his disciples, none had taken up this humble task. Their thoughts were consumed with the kingdom of God, their imaginations ignited by visions of thrones and power and glory. Luke even tells us that they were arguing about who among them would be the greatest in the kingdom that Jesus was ushering in. Yet, none of them assumed the role of a servant to perform the simple courtesy of washing feet. John records the events in chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments and, taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, "What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterward you will understand." Indeed, Jesus is the King, all right. He is the King of Kings, and here he is washing the dirty feet of those for whom he cares deeply and drying them with a towel. Here we find a king whose scepter, the king's symbol of authority and power, is a towel. Pastor Darrell Johnson identifies 4 truths associated with Jesus' towel. The first truth is that the towel dramatically represents the king's entire career. Jesus washing his disciples' feet was no isolated event, but it corresponds to his whole journey of his incarnation. Jesus taught and led by serving. Truth number 2 of the king's towel revealed the king's own concept of royalty. The human perspective is probably similar to Peter's reaction as he is horrified by Jesus' actions. "You shall never wash my feet." In that upper room, Peter had his mind on the things of humankind, not on God. That's why Jesus responded with, "What I am doing, you do not understand now, but afterward, you will all understand." The third truth of the towel is the king's great action on behalf of his subjects. When he said, "Afterward, you will all understand," the disciples had to be confused. Afterward? After what? The simple fact is that the towel points directly to the king's death on the cross. The hour had come, he was about to be betrayed. The fourth truth of the king's towel is this: the towel now distinguishes those who have allowed the king to serve them. It marks those who know and follow and live with the servant king. In verse 14, Jesus puts it like this: "If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet." The simple fact is that if Jesus, our King, truly said that, then we ought to be fighting one another for the privilege of being first with the towel, taking up the position of our King. We follow a King whose power is shown through a towel. It represents his mission, true royalty, and his act of serving others. The towel also marks those who have received his grace. When I struggle to serve, it's a sign that I must let the King wash my feet again, to pause and receive his love. As we humble ourselves and let him serve us, we enter the freedom of God's kingdom. Maundy Thursday is the time to receive that love again so that we can love more deeply than ever before. It's how we participate with the King's scepter. We serve. I want to invite you to South Rock Christian Church on Friday, April 18th at 7 o'clock p.m. for a Good Friday service. Here we will examine Jesus' final words of Holy Week, which will set the stage for Resurrection Sunday. Be blessed, and I hope to see you soon.